this module is long, right? We've been on it for years, right? And I hope you're not getting too bored. I'll put in some games in between the contents. You'd have actually seen some of the games already to play to just keep you excited about it. But basically, for this one, we would be looking at some of the standards. So we've looked at the URL, the methods, the body. I'll be looking at the response standards. So far up until now, our focus has been on the request. We make a request to the backend or to the server, and we get a response from the backend, the server, or the third-party system. But then there are some standard codes that the backend has to respond to us with for us to know if it was a successful request, if it was a failed request, and even if it was a failed request, what kind of failed request was it? So for example, when you see a 200, you know that, it's just a successful request. When the server returns a 200 to us. When the server returns a 404, what do you think it is? Guess? It means the URL was not found. So it means that you're actually making a request to an invalid URL. Let me show you an example. Let me make a request on my browser to... I told you the default request on the browser is a GET request, right? So let me make a request to a URL that doesn't exist. The URL exists, but the path would be incorrect. So we can see this is it, 404 not found. So there are just some basic standards, like standard code, the 200, the 404, the 500 for badge request. You would see this a lot when you're working with documentations, when you're also reviewing the backend developer code. And in the API testing, this would help you even API test, right? Test what your backend developers have done, write the acceptance criteria, and ensure it's working. So let's go to Chrome and just search for REST APIs response standard. We'll look for the Mozilla one. Let me add Mozilla. This is what we are looking for. And if you look at it, there are some response standard here. Let's look for the response code. Hold on. REST API response code. So we see it here. And we can see when you have a request from 100 to 199, informational response, what do they mean? In the case that the client should continue with the request or ignore the response to the request is already complete. You're not going to be dealing much with this at the early days. A successful request is from 200 to 299. So when you return a 201, 201, 202, 203 up to 299, it means that the requests are successful. When you have a 300 to 399, it means that it was a redirect. In this case, one very popular use case of the redirect is from HTTP to HTTPS. So when a user tries to make a request to a server or to a backend or to a third party using HTTP, not the secure part, HTTPS, the server might redirect the user to use HTTPS instead. But the server returns a 300 and informs the client to make a redirect. When you have a client error response, you have a 400 to 499. So 404, for example, the fault belongs to the client. The client is making a request to the wrong URL. There's a mistake in the URL, like we saw here. 404 not found. The other client error responses, for example, there are 401, there's the unauthorized. You're not authorized to make a request to this endpoint. So the general standards are, so when you get a 400 to a 499, it means that the error is from the client. Either the client is not authorized to make this request, or the client is sending a bad request. The request is not well formatted, the request is not found, the URL is not found, the method is wrong. Those are client requests. And when you have a server error response, it means that the error is on the backend or the third-party provider. So you get a 500, a 501, a 502. Let's look at some of them. So for the server response, you can see. Oh, I stopped it early. A 500 internal server error, might have seen that. 501 not implemented, bad gateway, service unavailable. So that you know that when you get a 500 error when you're developing a system, you know that the error belongs to the server. The server, there's nothing the client can do. There's nothing the frontend can do. The error is on the backend. Let's look at some of the 400 errors. So 400 is bad request, 401 is unauthorized, 402 is payment required, 402 is forbidden, 404 is not found. I mean, you get the basic gist, right? So these codes are returned by the client, by the server, right? By the server. and the third party system to communicate with us about the state of the request, what kind of request it is. Yeah. So, I mean, in the project, you're going to build out an API, write the requests and the response. You'll see the project questions. You might have to do a little bit more research than I've said. I will share some resources in the descriptions. But that's it about the error response code, the response code, and the error responses. Attempt the quizzes. See you. Bye.